There's shocking news this week that apparently hundreds of thousands of Brits are signing off on long-term sick, and it's costing the economy £43 billion a year. Apparently, a year and a half of furlough, we got so used to sitting on our butts watching Tiger King. We wanted it to continue. And who can blame these people? It's so easy to get signed off on the sick. I mean, I love it when The Guardian says only 0.6% of benefits claimants are fraudulent. Listen, I'm Scottish. If only 0.6% of benefits claimants are fraudulent, I must have known every single last one of them. The tax we pay in this country is ridiculous. Rishi Sunak, despite being apparently a Tory, has taken our tax take up to the highest level since the Second World War, and the government doesn't even spend it well. The government is trying to tell you that it knows how you want your money spent better than you do yourself. That's absolutely ridiculous. And high taxes don't even actually increase the amount of tax taken in. So Keir Starmer wants to bring in a tax on private schools. It's going to raise $1.6 billion. That's actually going to mean that people take their kids out of private school, and it's going to cost the state $4 billion to educate them. It's ridiculous.
Well done. That was over a minute, but well done.
Yeah, I could go on. I'm very emotive about this.
Absolutely. I mean, I do find it absolutely ridiculous that, you know, you've got the likes of AstraZeneca, who we were all waxing lyrical about not too long ago, being heroes of, I don't know, some vaccine or other. And now we're telling them that taxes are too high in Britain and they're going to Ireland instead.
Exactly. I mean, our corporation tax is going up to 25%. It's ridiculous. And it's to pay for a bloated public sector, which is actually damaging our economy. So our private sector is starved of workers at the moment. Yeah. They're crying out. There's a real shortage of workers in the economy. If we slashed some of these useless, indolent public sector desk jockeys, they'd go into the private sector and actually generate some wealth for the country.
But Leo and Darren, do you understand why taxes are high and why public spending is high? Because the demand on the state is high, because people are not making enough money at the moment because living costs are too high. And that has been a problem of the British economy.
But that's exactly what Leo was saying.
We've also just spent hundreds of billions of pounds on our COVID response. We've spent hundreds of billions of pounds on an energy support scheme. You can't pay for that by cutting taxes.
Yeah, but hang on,
Liz Truss tried to do that and it was a disaster.
No. Hang on, because I genuinely think that our economy is stagnating and will continue to until taxes are cut on individuals. The incentive to work harder, get that promotion, move up the career ladder, invest in whatever property or whatever it is reduced massively by the fact that people get caught in tax traps. They're taxed the majority of their income in some cases. They're taxed on absolutely everything they do. And I genuinely think that is what's causing our economy to stagnate so far.
No, it does.
Demand drivers on the stage, but the ageing population, the shrinking labour force. What does cutting taxes do to solve that problem?
It stimulates.
I'd love to see taxes come down.
And you
lower.
call yourself a Tory? I mean,
I'd love
that's
to see
ridiculous.
Taxes come down lower. But how does cutting taxes solve an ageing population and a shrinking labour force?
That's ridiculous.
Why taxes are going up.
The tax, putting up taxes reduces the tax take. I mean, look at somebody like Gary Lineker, who's a deeply kind person who wants to help all the needy people he tweets about so much, I'm sure. But because taxes are so high, he's been forced into tax avoidance schemes where he pays himself through a limited company. Now, isn't that a shame that Gary Lineker is unable to pay his fair share of tax?
I also think that people say, oh, yes, I'm comfortable with the tax burden being high, etc., until they realise just how much they're being taxed. It's very easy for young people who, are on low salaries, so they're not actually being taxed that much on their income. And then as they get a little bit on and they have a family to support and they're thinking about settling down, etc., they realise just how much of their pay slip is going to the state. And then they wonder, how is this being spent in the way I want it to be? And so many people up and down the country are sick of paying so much taxes for very little in return.
But the truth is, if only they were having kids, if only they were starting families, that's actually pretty unusual among people in their 30s, let alone their 20s these days, because they have so little disposable income. And the truth is...
because taxes are so high. That's what I've been saying, Benjamin.
No, because people aren't paid well enough. You know, in 2007, we earned more than the average American. Today, we earn £12,000 less than the average American, OK?
And we pay a lot more tax.
Enough, whether it's tax or not. And the truth is that we don't have enough workers, and we have a lot of old people who need a lot of healthcare, and there's only one way to pay for it. And so unless you want more immigration, which I do, how do you explain it?
That's ridiculous. If you take away the healthcare from the old people, it solves the problem of there being too many old people.
Take away healthcare, obviously, but you have to pay for it somehow. And if you don't have enough people of working age, how do you do that?
But it's not, I mean, the burden of old people, if you look at our public sector, I've worked in the public sector, I was left-wing before I worked in the public sector, that's what turned me right-wing, when I saw the waste and the profligacy. We could slash all these policy officers, all these equality, diversity and inclusion coordinators, it's a nonsense.
Hold on, Leo.
We're just wasting money.
The biggest spend of the state is on pensions than healthcare. These aren't sort of wasteful departments of wasteful civil servants. These are doctors, nurses, and paying for older people's pensions. You can't just cut staff out of those problems.
But I mean, the triple lock, for example. I mean, you bring up pensions. The triple lock was incredibly generous to old people, and it's basically bribing old people to vote for whoever's in power. They're saying, look, we're going to make sure you're looked after. And we've seen the proportion of the nation's wealth that's concentrated, is being more concentrated in the older generations who have equity, who have property.
Yeah, I just worry that we're creating an economy where the very richest people, who are more mobile than they've ever been in their lives, will look at the tax burden and think, you know what, I'll go off to Dubai, I'll go off to Florida, the Sunshine State, where I'll be taxed less. And then the rest of us, the middle class, working class people of this country, the bulk of the backbone of the country, will just be taxed to high heaven to pay for it all.
But do you think, is this a fundamental question of we've become a something-for-nothing nation in which we expect the state to do everything, and actually lockdown has given people the idea that the state can do everything.
And now everybody thinks that, because nobody knew that money existed before COVID happened, and then suddenly COVID happened and the government got all these hundreds of billions of pounds to pay for us to do nothing, and now people are like, well, let's keep that going. And now people are everybody in Britain wants the government to come around and wipe their bums for them. That is basically the mentality that a lot of us have, and I think we need to break that and get back to being a dynamic nation.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we're a very dynamic panel on this evening. I wonder if anyone at home actually disagrees with the fact. In my view, we pay too much tax in the UK.